Making these juicy sous vide burgers is one of my favorite ways to use sous vide ground beef. Hey, it's Jenna here from Sipbitego, and today I'm going to take you into the kitchen and show you how to make the most delicious sous vide burgers. You can finish them in a cast iron pan or a cast iron skillet on the stove, or you can finish them on the grill when they're done in the sous vide bath. So let's get started right from making these sous vide burgers from scratch. I am using a Wagyu farm ground beef, Hutterian, I can't pronounce that, but it's a Wagyu ground beef from Crowd Cow, an online butcher. And I'll leave their information and affiliate link below so you can stock up on delicious beef. You start with a pound if you're making 2 burgers, or 2 pounds if you're making 4 burgers. So we're using just 1 pound here for 2 burgers. And this is my husband, his lovely man model hands, as I call them, and he's adding just simple salt and pepper to the burger ground beef meat. So then he's gonna mix it all together with his hands. But at this point, if you wanted to add any other seasonings, you could. This hickory smoked black pepper is awesome. I worked with this company when the Home Chef Sous Vide Cookbook was coming out, and we did a little giveaway with some of their awesome smoky olive oils. So I'll leave their information for you here as well. So a generous amount of salt and pepper goes into the burger when it's getting gently combined with hands. You see we do a little teamwork here. And then the next step is to form them into patties. And since my husband has so much experience working in kitchens and making awesome dinners, he is shaping the patties for us here. So he gently combines them into about a baseball size ball in his hand, maybe a little bit smaller. And then he begins flattening them out, keeping in mind the size of the bun that the sous vide burger is going to go on. So you want to make the burger a little bit wider, but actually sous vide burgers keep a lot of their volume because they're slowly cooking. They're not scorching away on the barbecue grill. So anyways, once you make the shape of the beef patty, this one's about 2 inches thick. This is kind of a trick people do for the grill to poke a hole in the middle. We just did it anyways for sous vide. I think actually it may not matter that much because once the sous vide burger gets vacuum sealed, it's going to mess with the shape a little bit. So anyways, the second burger patty is formed, and then a little bit more seasoning goes on to the outside of the burgers. So there's just a little bit more salt and pepper that goes on top, but if you wanted to at this point, you could use a different salt. You could use like a garlic salt. You could use another smoky salt. You could put any sort of flavors you wanted. If you were going to make these into, some sort of Greek burgers and top them with feta cheese or something, you might want to add some oregano or other Greek spices. So once the second patty is done, and once you decide whether or not you're going to add more seasonings to the sous vide burgers, it's time to vacuum seal them. If you love delicious sous vide recipes, check out the Home Chef Sous Vide Cookbook. It just came out this year, and it's filled with tasty recipes. And just a reminder to subscribe to the Sipbitego channel on YouTube. I post weekly, sometimes daily, new recipe videos depending on how much my baby naps. So anyways, subscribe to the Sipbitego channel on YouTube, and let's get right back to making those delicious, juicy sous vide burgers. So the next step is to get burgers into either Ziploc bags or vacuum seal sous vide burgers so they can be cooked in the sous vide bath. And if you're putting them in a Ziploc bag, you're going to need to use separate Ziploc bags for each burger because you don't want them to move around while they're cooking in the sous vide bath. I really like to vacuum seal most of my sous vide cooks. Sous vide recipes that are vacuum sealed are easy to make ahead and freeze, and then sous vide from frozen too. So I love to just package them up and use a bag that is small to just fit a couple burgers at a time. If I was going to do 4 burgers, I would use one of the rolls that are a whole foot wide because then I'd just do 4 in one vacuum sealed pack. And I do wish that these burgers weren't touching at all. You could see that I was trying really hard to separate out the burgers, but they're just touching a little bit and it will be okay. They turn out absolutely fine, even though the shape is a little bit funny with the vacuum sealer. There's actually a trick to that. You could vacuum seal it almost all of the way, but I let it go on this one, and that's why it's super vacuum sealed, and it's gonna have a little bit funny shape because it's gonna cook and have those little creases, but that's not the point. Sous vide burgers are juicy and delicious, and it doesn't exactly matter what they look like. I will say they're probably not the most beautiful sous vide recipe you could make. But anyways, the inside is so delicious. So now we're going to talk about how to sous vide it. And the deal is, oops, I left this photo in. This was a mistake. This is an example of a home project gone bad. So here is the sous vide bath getting ready to cook the burgers. And there's a copy of the Home Chef Sous Vide Cookbook because actually the sous vide burger recipe is in the Home Chef Sous Vide Cookbook. So check out my new cookbook. You can get a Kindle copy if you're just into device stuff. But there's over 100 recipes, most of which are not on sipbitego. So anyways, the burgers go into the sous vide bath, and my recommendation is to cook them at 138. That's going to cook them to medium rare, but the deal is you can finish them as long as you want on a pan on the stove. I'm going to show you how to use a cast iron pan to finish sous vide burgers at the end of this video, but you could also finish them by cooking sous vide burgers on a grill at the end. So you can heat them up, but I like to keep them about medium rare. Sometimes I'll do 140, do medium, a little closer to medium, because you can always cook them more later, and that will please the most people. Plus, it's really delicious how these burgers turn out, and they're in there cooking so long that it kills a lot of the bacteria. But you can read more about sous vide cooking burgers and the science behind all of the technique elsewhere. So anyways, once they're done cooking in the sous vide bath, the sous vide hamburgers go into an ice bath just for a couple of minutes to cool down. I like to do that so they're a little bit colder when they're getting finished in the cast iron pan. The cook time for sous vide burgers is pretty short. They can be cooked in about 45 minutes. The sous vide burgers then just need to be finished for about 5 to 10 minutes after that, and then let them rest for another 5 to 10 minutes. So really the sous vide burgers cook in under an hour and 15 minutes, let's say. So while you're doing that, you have time to prep other sides, and on this particular night we were eating some roasted potatoes. So anyways, once the sous vide burgers are done cooking in the bath water, it's time to take them out, and I like to prepare a paper towel and move the burgers to the paper towel and then pat another paper towel on top of the burgers. It's important to dry sous vide burgers before finishing them in a cast iron skillet because you don't want them to have too much moisture. The moisture is really inside of the burger, but when the outside of the burger is dry, it's gonna get a nice sear to it instead of just steaming the burgers further. So it's time to pat the burger patties dry. They do look a little bit funny because I went a little crazy with the vacuum sealer. Like I said, if you're using a Ziploc bag, they'll retain their shape better in a perfect circle. And if you're vacuum sealing, you could always just not completely vacuum seal it all the way. Anyhow, when the sous vide burgers are done, you're going to pat them dry, and then it's time to finish them. So the first thing I'm going to show you is how to finish them with a mayo sear. And actually, this is only one where you put the ingredient on top. So if you're using mayo, you put a smear of mayo on the side, both top and bottom of the sous vide burgers, and that's going to sear them really nicely in a stove. The other way that you could, or on the stove top. The other way that you could do this is that you could skip the mayo altogether and you could instead use a tablespoon of butter or some olive oil in the cast iron skillet. You would put that in first, and then you would add the sous vide burgers. And if you're doing that, you don't have to put anything else on the sous vide burgers. But if you decide to go this mayo route and add sous vide and add mayo to sous vide burgers, then you just put a little bit on each side while you're heating up the cast iron skillet on medium, high, or high. And so this eggy mixture on the outside is going to react and kind of brown the outside, and it's going to be really delicious. Now, you can check out sipbitego.com to see exactly at what temperature to cook sous vide burgers to get to medium, medium rare, medium well, all of that. But for this one, I know that I love to cook them at 138 degrees, and then I love to finish them in a cast iron skillet for a nice sear. So I didn't use a digital thermometer, but if you wanted to get a specific temperature inside, you could use a digital thermometer unless you just cooked it sous vide style to that temperature. Now, why even bother doing that? Well, the real reason is because maybe you're cooking for a family of 4, or you're having a couple over and you're cooking sous vide burgers in the backyard for a barbecue. Well, one person wants their burger medium rare, another wants their burger to medium. There are more techie ways to do it, but the easiest way, in my opinion, is to sous vide them to the lowest temperature. So sous vide the burgers to medium rare and then finish them to the desired temperature. So I would just keep flipping them every minute or so in the pan until they reach an internal temperature of medium or medium well, or whatever the other people want. Just make sure to get those edges of the sous vide burger, and just a reminder that your sous vide burger should not look like a UFO like my sous vide burger looks like. It's just because I went a little overboard and let it vacuum seal for too long, and it really sucked the beautiful disc shape out of the burger, but these still tasted awesome. So look at all of that mayo just sears off. That's the whole point of making sure to do the edges of the sous vide burger as well, because you just want to make sure there's no mayo that's been uncooked, because that means that there is an area that needs to be sizzled on the pan to get some extra browning and flavor. So once the burgers are done, let them rest for about 5 to 10 minutes just so the juice is set. And now the inside is really, really, really super juicy from all of that time in the sous vide bath, about 45 minutes, or an hour 45 minutes if you were sous videing burgers from frozen. And then in the cast iron skillet, they just took a couple of minutes there. But anyways, so I'm going to show you what it looks like to just put it all together at the end. So this burger is being topped very simply with some mixed greens, and then we did caramelize some onions, so those go on top. But so does a little bit of ketchup. We like barbecue sauce here. I mean, you probably don't need anyone giving you advice on what burger toppings to use. Everyone has their own favorite. I like pickles, and if you're wondering about some sous vide side dishes for burgers, you could try something like using sous vide onions. You can find the recipe for that at sipbitego.com. You could also try sous vide bacon. I'll leave you a link for that as well. And let's see, in the Home Chef Sous Vide cookbook, there are sous vide zucchini chips. I love zucchini chips. I first started having them at a local bar here, or it's like a charcuterie bar here in Portland, Oregon, and I just love them. So you can sous vide pickles, vegetables really easily, and zucchini chips are an interesting choice. This one's kind of naked burger here, but sous vide style burgers are so delicious, so enjoy it how you'd like. Well, I hope you're inspired to try sous vide ground beef patties and turn them into delicious burgers for you, your family, for an event, for anything really. They're a great item you can meal prep ahead. Well, until next time, I hope that you subscribe to the sipbitego channel, because I have a lot of delicious recipes coming up, and visit sipbitego.com to print out all these recipes if you'd like that. So until next time, I hope you have a wonderful and delicious day. Cheers!